Welcome to the Tepper School of Business Multimedia Series. For more information on the Tepper School at Carnegie Mellon, please visit us at www.tepper.cmu.edu/multimedia. And now, here's your selected video.
So good afternoon, and thanks for coming. I hope it was not the free lunch that brought you, but I don't use PowerPoint presentations unless I absolutely have to. This is really not about a visual learning. This is about hopefully a dialogue. So I do have some comments that I would like to share with you, and then I'm going to open up the floor for Q&A. I just had, what do we have, 20 students maybe, or so from the marketing group, marketing and operations, I believe, for a roundtable discussion. And a lot of the topics that we discussed there I'm going to hit on probably in a little bit more detail here. But let me first say that it is always one of my favorite stops on my speaking circuit to come and speak to students. You are I won't necessarily say the next generation, but certainly a future generation of leaders for companies like Bayer. And some of you will, you may aspire to a job like the one that I have today. You may take a different approach and become an entrepreneur and go through multiple startups. Certainly, this is a great university to do that. You may decide to be in the public policy area and be politicians or become activists. You're being prepared to take whatever path that is interesting for you. And what I'm going to tell you today certainly should not be misconstrued as somehow a turn-by-turn direction as to how to be successful. Successful in business, certainly. Because the paths that you are going to take to your success are as individual as you are. But I do believe that there is some value in history. And there is always something that can be learned from the pioneers who have gone before, the ones with the arrows in their back. And so, today what I'm going to try to do is to give you a little bit of insight as to what has helped me to be successful in my career, what my leadership style is, how do I approach my employees, more importantly, how do I approach the development of a strategy for our company here in North America and execute against it. And I'll also give you a few highlights about what I thought were critical success factors, key elements or key issues during my career that I think really come back and had a significant impact on my success. So, as I said, no GPS. I don't have one of those for you here today. But I am a person who believes in you are what you were when. Are there any others out there who believe that? You think it's important where you came from? So we just had a brief bio. You may have seen the full bio. I would never expose anyone to that in a full sense. But there's a lot of information that's not in there that I think is important. And I'd like to start with that. So I was born near a small town in rural West Virginia. So I wasn't born in a small town. I was born near one. I was in a family of 5 children. I was the middle child. So if you believe in what that means, I was the middle child. I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. So I was sort of the fulcrum on all of these things, I guess. My father was a jack of all trades who, about the time that I came into the world, landed a job with PPG as a chemical plant operator, and he finished his career there, a very long career as a chemical plant operator for PPG. My mother was a part-time retail clerk and a full-time mother. So, as you can probably gather from that, I come from rather average sort of background. I spent most of my summers on my grandparents' dairy farm. That's where I learned to really work. That's a 24/7 job, and I learned to work there, and I not just because it was fun, but because they needed me and my older brother to help them eke out a rather meager living from a dairy farm, which we did. I loved my time there. I look back at it as some of my fondest memories, and despite all of the hard work. During that time, I was still a good student. I always loved school, strange that way. I loved school, I was a good student, I worked hard, things came pretty naturally for me as far as education is concerned. But I mentioned that I was born near a small town at the time when I became a 7th grader. At that point I had to go into the booming metropolis of 7,000 to attend junior high. You know, the bigotry is a terrible thing, and so I came into that small town, and I was a hick farmer, right? So a hick farmer in the town of 7,000, and I was a little overweight, and so I was, like most teenagers at that point, very insecure. Struggled through that. Found out that just about that point in my life that I was endowed or blessed with above average athleticism, and I decided to pursue that a bit, not so much because it fulfilled me, but because it gave me a way to get over being a hick farmer, overweight teenager. And I was pretty successful with that. By the time I graduated high school, I had a full scholarship to Virginia Tech to play football. But I had one other honor that it was even more important to me, and I still have the pictures from the event, and that was I received an award from the Society of Professional Engineers, and I knew at that time when I received the award that I was locked to be an engineer. That's what I was going to be. I had no idea what it meant, but I was going to be an engineer. They had recognized me as a future engineer. So I did go to Virginia Tech and pursued engineering and pursued football, and the engineering desire lasted longer than the football desire did, so I think that was a good thing. And I decided to bring all of that back to Mobay. Mobay was a predecessor company. Probably none of the students, but some of you in the room who've been around Pittsburgh for a while will remember when it was said Mobay out on the office building out on the Parkway, and it didn't say Bear. No, same company, just a different name. And I've been there for 33 years since, and as the introduction said, I was the first intern to come and work there. Personality profile. Let me tell you a little bit about that. You know, there are lots of ways to check your personality profile, and I've done several of those, and I'm basically a non-conforming. I am expressive, I am intuitive, I am a pain in the rear for a lot of people because I am non-conforming. It's been an interesting career with a German company to be sort of my non-conforming personality. But I also am inquisitive, curious. I'm very much research and creation-oriented, and that works great in this company, despite the fact that the non-conformances occasionally get in the way. So that's a bit about who I am. And I think it's important for you to understand that, because as I start to talk about my leadership style, you'll probably think back and say, okay, maybe I can understand a little bit about where that comes from now. My leadership style is one that I didn't, you know, I can't go back and say, well, I did that in high school or I did this here. This was a style that's been forged over many years of successes, failures. Happy to talk about those, although you have to ask that question, but successes and failures, good managers, bad managers. I've probably seen some of the worst and some of the best you could ever imagine, as most people in their careers would attest to. And I've learned from every one of those, and through that forged a leadership style, which I'll describe to you now, that I really did not think, I don't believe that it really came into full demand, and therefore into full development until I started hitting C-level jobs. Many aspects of it I always used, but C-level jobs are, they require something different. They become much less about what you do and much more about how you do it. And if you don't like politics, don't ever go to a C-level job. I mean, those are some of the, some of the issues you have to recognize. But what I found was that when I came into a new assignment, I needed to spend a lot of time assessing where we were. You've heard about the first 100 days, right? Now, a lot of people think the first 100 days is about what did you accomplish by the end of your first 100 days. I would take a different approach, and I would say, what did I learn by the end of my first 100 days? Because it takes at least that long and longer just to understand the current situation that you're in. Unless you're much more intelligent than I am, and most of you probably are by virtue of being here at CMU, but I still don't think you can do it much faster than that. So you have to assess what the situation is, and then coming out of that, I come up with what I call, to myself, my inspiring vision. I have to have an inspiring vision as to where I want to take this job, this company, this responsibility, because if I don't have an inspiring vision, how am I going to communicate it to anyone else? How am I going to get anyone else to follow me? How am I going to describe what the future is going to look like when we put in all of this hard work to get where we're going to go? And that's my first step. And now, whether it's inspiring or not really has to do with whether it resonates at all with my employees. And that means that I really hit the mark, that I really assess what the real issues are. And is it something that can really motivate them to change behavior? Because at the end of the day, if you're going to change anything from A to B or X to Y, it's got to be a behavior change of your employees. As an executive, there's very little you do other than get your employees to behave differently. And so it has to be an inspiring vision that will motivate change in behavior. So that's my first step. And coming out of that, I then apply what I call my rule of 5. Everyone in Bear who works with me understands my rule of 5. And I always say, I can't think more complex. My mind is so simple that if I go beyond 5, I can't process it. Fact of the matter is, if we're doing anything with our employees beyond about 5 strategic objectives, they can't comprehend it either. So I have to know elevator speech fast what my 5 critical issues are, and that's what I come up with after my 100 days. Here's my inspiring vision. Here's where we're going to go. Here's our 5 issues. And by the way, these 5 issues are going to take us about 5 years to accomplish. I'm a CEO. If I'm talking about what's going to take 5 weeks to accomplish, I'm doing someone else's job. If I'm talking about what's going to take 5 months to accomplish, I'm doing someone else's job. This is about the 5 to 10 year time frame. So here's what we're going to be like at the end, and here are the 5 objectives that we're going to go after. Now, you could say, why 5? Is that magical? No, it's not, but it works for me. And I have to admit that one time and one time only I did 6. It was a painful change for me. But I was under duress, I had to do it. So I did 6. But really the issue is keep it something that can be comprehended and that you can manage. So I developed my rule of 5, and then I began to communicate that tirelessly to every employee in the organization at every opportunity that I get. The next thing, that's step 2. And I publish those. I publish those just about this time of the year. So in December, we're going to talk about the 5 overarching goals. Everyone in the organization is going to know what they are. There'll be KPIs around those. I mean, this is kind of the typical management stuff that doesn't excite someone like me, but you still have to do it so that you are tracking to performance. But all of this is really about step 3, and that's empowering your organization. I coach, I don't play. I try to lead rather than manage. And so what I'm doing at this point in time is saying, here's the direction, here's where we're going. Here are the 5 areas of focus that we're going to have for the next 5 years. They will evolve and they will change, but this is the agenda. You now know a lot about what we're going to be doing. Now, while all of that's going on, we're still going to sell stuff, we're going to invoice it, we're going to pay bills, we're going to do all of those transactional issues that are all part of doing business. But the executives better be focused on these 5 issues. So this is goal alignment now that drives down through the organization, and once that's been done, it's now for the organization's responsibility to deliver. I'll track, I'll watch, most importantly, I'll coach, I'll engage the other executives, I'll find out where there are issues, where we're going off the rails and try to get it back on the rails. But I'm not micromanaging these issues. I'm making sure that the 5-year strategy is still appropriate. I'm checking what's going on externally to be sure that we don't need to have a change of plan. Step 3 is then to empower the organization. Step 4, I mentioned, is tireless communication. This is what I talk about. You know, it doesn't matter what form. It gets tiring. You know, don't think that an executive likes to say the same thing every time they get into a meeting. We get tired of it. But you know what? It takes many, many times before the message really is comprehended, to the extent that I'm well past having any pleasure or enjoyment from it. But my organization still doesn't always get it. And I'm still constantly reaching out to those who aren't fully aligned or who don't really understand, or giving the opportunity for them to do it. So tirelessly communicating really becomes very sometimes boring, but it takes one question from an interested party, someone who gets it and gives you the right feedback, to completely energize you and give you passion around the issue again. So I do that. I have multiple channels by which I do it. My first and foremost is town hall meetings. We do webcast town hall meetings once a quarter. And most of that is focused around updates on and critical messaging around our overarching goals. We'll reach out and connect with hundreds of people around the North American region on those town hall meetings. I do round tables with my employees. I do 20 to 25 employees every month. I do them at every site. So when I visit a site, I never just visit a site and talk about the business results. I mostly go to a site to have a round table meeting with my employees at that site. And I have 40-some around the United States. So it's not an easy thing to do. So I travel heavily and I do round tables there. I try to reach out and touch as many employees as I possibly can. So, for those of you who were at the earlier session, you know, so that I can show my passion face to face, eye to eye, why this is important and why they have to do something they don't want to do, or why they have to do something different than the way they did it yesterday, or why they have to do something that may not even make any sense at the moment. But it's very important that they do. And they're only going to get that if they can see me, if they can touch me, if they can challenge me, if we can have a debate and a dialogue about it. So you have to tirelessly communicate. I also do a blog, because there are some people who don't feel comfortable challenging the CEO in front of the crowd, no matter how safe it is. But they'll all challenge me on my blog, right? That's never a problem. So I run a blog, which can be anonymous. Probably 90% of the questions are, 10% not. I answer those questions. I'll share with you I'll admit something. Whenever I took on this new job of Corp in addition to my BMS job, I ran out of time early on because I was trying to do my 100-day assessment of my new role. I was still trying to keep the other business going through a significant change initiative, and I quit answering my blog questions myself. Right, Katie? And I have a group that's called my Culture of Choice team. They're my sounding board. They keep the feelers out about how things are going in the organization. And my Culture of Choice team came back and said, the employees don't think you're answering the questions anymore. and it was in a staff meeting, and I said, they're right. I'm not, but I'm going to do it as of today. So now I'm back answering all of my questions. And employees know that because they know my voice. They know my phraseology. They know how I answer these issues. If someone else is doing it, they say it sounds like HR or legal's answering it. When you answer it honestly and openly, and sometimes we don't even know how you get off saying those things. But and so I run a blog which allows everyone to ask anything they want, and I think we typically run about 2 questions a day. I mean, during times of change, it becomes much heavier than that, but it's probably averages about 2 questions a day. And I think that's another critical way for me to get the message out and to engage with employees. And then you have all the usual stuff of voicemail messages, broadcast messages, email, all of the stuff that I find to be very, very ineffective, quite frankly. That's not the way you communicate, so that's a little piece of advice. Don't ever think you're going to communicate with your employees through email. That doesn't work. And you shouldn't try to do it that way. Then step 5. Now, by the way, there are 5 steps, not because I believe in the rule of 5, but it's just the way my life works, by the way. And I could give you the fact that all of the important dates in my life, with my children's birth, my marriage date and all of that, happen to have a 5 in it. I don't know why that is, but it is. The 5th step then is really, it's not so much a step as it is what I believe you have to do for credibility and integrity, and that is you have to model the way yourself. You have to lead by example. If I'm telling my executives, you have to get out and talk to your employees, connect with your employees, understand where they are, and I'm not doing it, 0 credibility. No one listens to that. But if they know I'm doing it, and that I'm meeting with their employees, and that their employees are telling me, boy, I wish your other executives would do this. You know, now they have a problem, right? So you have to model the way. You have to be out there. You have to lead by example. Good and bad. You have to be able to lead by example. And that consumes a tremendous amount of time that a CEO really doesn't have. But you have to do it. If you don't do it, you can forget about a whole lot of the other things that you're trying to do. So now, those are the 5 steps. That's my leadership style. I mean, it's really not complicated, and it's quite simplistic. But if you do it, it requires great discipline and investment of time. I'll give you an example. When I came into the material science business in 2004, I inherited, or I got a business that had just had a carve out. We had just sold some of the product line that was there, but we had a great portfolio. It is a great portfolio. It's one of the best portfolios in a material science or a polymers business clearly today. We had very experienced, dedicated employees coming in, but we also had a business that was overly complex, that had broken processes, and as a result of that, there was an awful lot of time spent in non-value added repair work, firefighting, and rework. And so that led to an unsustainable cost structure, quite frankly. And so after about the first 100 days looking at what I thought I had just taken control of, I said there are 5 issues we have to address. First, we're in a cyclical business. We have to be able to profitably manage through any downturn. And we assessed what that meant. What do we think could happen? We ran our scenarios. What if this happened? What if that happened? How much would our business drop? How much would our prices increase? What would happen? So we did all the scenario planning that you guys have learned to do and that you have perfected, and to identify what we thought we needed to do. And we decided on a cost structure and an approach, and we weren't even close to how ugly it got last year. No one would have ever dreamed of a 40% drop in the business. That would have been depression level, and no one thought that was ever going to happen. But we knew that we had to be able to profitably manage through the downturn, and we started to develop concepts around variabilization of our cost structure. not earth-shattering and new to anyone else, but it was to our business. And keep in mind, it's all about behavior change and changing how people do things and how they think. The second thing that we had to do was we had to achieve best-in-class, what we call best-in-class business process efficiency. I had to run that business more effective than anyone else. And to do that, simple messaging again, we said we had to simplify, standardize, and automate. That became the mantra. So when anyone said to me, hey, by the way, what's this best-in-class business process efficiency? You have to have your elevator speech ready, right? Simplify, standardize, and automate. That's it. We're going to simplify our processes, we're going to standardize them and run them the same across all of our business units, and then we're going to automate them as far as we possibly can so that we can take employees who are doing transactional work and have them do something that's more value added, or we can reduce our cost structure, whatever is appropriate at the time. Third thing we had to do was improve manufacturing reliability so that we could improve our working capital. Our working capital situation was not where it needed to be. Fourth thing we needed to do was implement an open innovation model so that we could start to build relationships and strengthen relationships with universities like CMU, with startup companies, with other larger companies, even in some cases competitors, in a controlled way, so that we could begin to create open innovation, take an open innovation approach to creating new products. And through that, to be able to grow at factors of GDP. And we'll not talk about that today. And finally, our fifth issue was we had to upgrade the organization skills. We did not have skills in the organization to do lean design, to be able to run our businesses in a lean way, to be able to apply Six Sigma thinking. We didn't have effective change leadership skills in the organization throughout the entire organization. Remember, the kind of changes that we're trying to make here, what we had to accomplish required significant change leadership, and that change leadership required everyone to have an inspiring vision, to be able to align their goals with what we were doing on an overarching sense, and to be able to connect with all of their employees and make sure they had buy-in. We had to train that into our managers, or we had to give them those skills through on-the-job training. During this, we took all of these issues, we worked them through in a step-by-step process, and at about year 1.5 or year 2, we actually created a program around it, which we called our competitiveness transformation. It was incredibly successful. I've been contacted by the Wall Street Journal and others to talk about this. I don't talk about these issues publicly because some people lost their jobs. And I don't want to talk about that. That's not what the project was all about. What the project was about achieving these 5 overarching goals that allowed us to profitably manage through the downturn, which we did, and to do it in a way by changing the culture of the company and to set in place business process re-engineering, variabilization of our models, all of the things that you can do one at a time, but we did all of them at once, and it was wildly successful. We cut over $100 million out of our cost structure. We have we've significantly reduced our working capital. We've done a lot of things that you have to do to really run a fine-tuned business. Now, I'm on the next wave. So we have a new inspiring vision that's going to be rolled out this year, and it's very heavily on growth and innovation. And I haven't told my employees that, so I'm not going to tell you that yet. But that's the cycle, and that's an example of how you do it. And that's my secret to success from a leadership style. Of course, it's how you go about it that's important, not what you do. A few key career success factors, and I have 4, not 5. I have 4 that I keep in view. This one I talked to the small group about. For a visual, my view of a career is not a ladder. My view of a career is a pyramid. A ladder is unstable, and the higher you go, the riskier it gets. A pyramid, if you have a broad enough base, can withstand just about anything for many, many years and all kinds of pressures and all of that. And so what do I mean? I mean, understand most of the operations around your business. Do not be in a hurry to take the step on the next rung on the ladder. Be in a hurry to broaden your skill base so that you understand how accounting operations get done. You understand how IT gets done. You understand how to implement IT systems and what it means. You understand how to make stuff, right? You got to make things. How do you make things? How do you make polymers? How do you make pharmaceuticals? How do you make fungicides, pesticides? Understand how you make things. Understand how you sell them. Get a broad base so that you know how business works. And if you know how business works, doing a job like this is a whole lot simpler than having climbed a ladder very quickly. So that's number one. Number two, someone asked me today in the round table, what was the best job you ever had? And the best job I ever had was the worst job I ever had. It was the hardest job I ever had. It was the job that no one wanted, and that was to roll out SAP and all of the business process re-engineering that was associated with that. And I took the program on. I learned more than I ever learned in about a 3-year period. I became incredibly networked across the entire global company as well as outside of the company. And those things I didn't know about how business worked, I did by the time it was done. So my CMU MBA came while rolling out SAP across healthcare, crop science, and material science within our business, as well as taught me how to deal with politics at a level that I probably never wanted or anticipated I would have to, but found out that I could. So accept the big challenging jobs that no one wants. Take the ones that, make sure you deliver, but if you've done that, take the ones that are really going to stretch you, because those are the ones that are going to make or break you. Third one, always deliver on your promises, whether it's to an employee or whether it's to your management or whether it's to your shareholders. If you tell them you're going to deliver, deliver on it, because it goes to your credibility. And if you don't have credibility, you have nothing in an executive role. If you have no credibility, you have nothing. And the last one of my 4, I also mentioned in the round earlier today, and this is the most important for me, is be sure that you always remain true to your value system. Remain true to your value system. And my value system is made up of 5 issues, of course. Number 1 is honesty. Number 2, integrity. Number 3 is hard work. Number 4 is family first. And number 5 is balance in all things. A lot of people say family first. Yeah, no, I have kids. I have 4 kids who play basketball, and between my wife and myself, we never miss a game. And they play high school basketball, they play college basketball, they travel all over the country. I spent my Thanksgiving holiday in Wilmington, North Carolina, where it wasn't all that great, but watching my daughter play basketball. You know, family first, and then if I keep my balance in all things, if I walk my 5 miles a day, 5 days a week, I'm healthy. And when I'm healthy, I'm smart. And when I'm smart, I do a good job of leading this company. Balance in all things. When you get out of balance with your value system, things that are important, you will not be successful. Sometimes you have to turn down the opportunities because it does not fit into your value system. That's about all I can tell you. That's how I manage, that's how I lead, that's how I was raised, and you know everything about me now. We have 15 minutes for questions, right? So please, I hope there are a lot. And by the way, this doesn't have to be follow-up questions about that. Anything. I like to discuss all issues. Yes?
First of all, thank you so much for being here and taking the time. My question goes to when you were just talking about your pyramid metaphor. Recently, Business Week read an article about business students taking on many concentrations at school. Certainly, well, a reality that we've seen in terms of recruiting, and this was emphasized in this article, is that the focus has gone toward more niche recruitment rather than broad-based recruitment. People really coming in and trying to take folks to do what they've done before.
Right.
And so I guess how does that play out in terms of the advice that you're providing in terms of what should be done, what shouldn't be done versus on the ground?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so let's not confuse your area of academic concentration with the development of your career. So I think clearly you have to do whatever the market's paying for at this point in time. And I think you can't be coming out of a university. It's not as good to come out of a university with a broad background without a strength in one particular area. That's up to you and your professors to decide what's the appropriate approach there. My advice is more about once you're out. And it really comes to this issue about, if you look at your job as, I want the job that allows me to get promoted as quickly as I can, and I expect that promotion to come about every 2 years, you can get that job. But my question is, how far do you think you can go in an organization if you do that? How far do you think you can go in your career? At some point in time, you run into issues that you just know nothing about, but you have to make decisions about them. And it becomes very difficult at a certain level in any company, if you're in the company mode. Now, entrepreneurs are a different issue. But if you're in a corporate world, it becomes very difficult to take a step back. I can't take someone as a vice president of marketing and make them easily a vice president of manufacturing, because there's just an awful lot there that they may not understand at a fundamental level about how manufacturing works and what's critically important. Now, to have done that 1 or 2 moves earlier is simpler. Yes?
Can you please give an example for a leadership failure that you had or encountered, and what have you learned from it?
Yeah. The leadership failure that I've had many, so I'll talk about the one that I think left the most pain in my chest. That was my first general management job. It was a great job, the most fun job I ever had. It was about a $25 million, really small business, about less than 100 employees. And this business was very technology focused, but it was now working in an industry that needed to be, because it was no longer about the technology so much, it was about how you approached a particular industry vertical. And we were selling into automotive, we were selling into construction, we were selling into appliances, for instance. And those were all different, right? Selling into, I know there are people here who've worked in automotive. I know there are probably some who've been in construction or appliance. It's different how you approach each one of those markets. Maybe not so much the technology, but how you have to approach them from a marketing and a support perspective, sales, marketing, and support. So I wanted to shift the organization from a product-focused, technology-focused to one that was really market-oriented. And it was a major shift, because this is a company that had been technology-focused for many years. I think I did all the right homework in developing the inspiring vision for why we needed to do it. I think I did all the right homework of how to go about it, and we had a team that did implement the changes. But I was taken out of the job right about midway through the implementation. I should never have accepted that move, because there was not enough institutionalization of thought at that point in time for the change to continue. What I did then was to leave an organization at a time that they greatly needed leadership, and I left them prematurely, and they floundered for about 2.5 years trying to work through that before they finally gave up. And it was 2.5 years of pain, agony, and low productivity that just didn't need to be there. So, at some point in time, you have to put the good of your enterprise ahead of your own personal good. And I didn't do that, and it cost the company money, it cost the employees a lot of pain, and that was a big failure in my view. Yes?
How did you learn to handle difficult situations? For example, there's be circumstances where you have to deal with a number of people who may not be in agreement with your opinions or thoughts, and there could be an internal politics which is being played out. So how did you learn, how did you come out of a situation like that, using your communication skills or not?
First, did everyone hear the question? Okay. So I think first you have to be out there. So if you're out there, you start to understand where the barriers are. You're out there talking to people. You start to understand what the concerns are. And by the way, some of those people who may be barriers to it or who don't disagree, or they may be doing it for exactly all the right reasons. You may be wrong. And so you have to be out there and understand what their arguments are and understand where they are on the issues, and to communicate with them. If you determine that argumentation is not really appropriate and that it's more of a political issue, then you have to be pretty swift, right? I mean, you have to be pretty swift and be willing to stand up in front of executives like that and say, which I've done this, this boat is going this direction. You can get on it and make this work and get your oar in the water and start rowing. If you don't want to do that, it's better to get off now because it'll be much less painful than it is getting off later. You have to be clear with people, right? If I make the wrong decision, if I take it in the wrong direction, if my strategy is bad, if my goals aren't appropriate, then I'll pay for that. But if the decision has been made that this is the strategy, this is the direction we're going, we've listened to all the arguments, we've had all of the discussion, and we're still convinced that this is the approach we're going to go, for those who aren't on board, it's time to get off. I think being there helps to sense that. I think being intuitive helps to understand where those kind of pockets are going to be long before they crop up. And then at the end of the day, you have to be a leader. And a leader sometimes, it's not all fun and it's not all positive. You have to be willing to lead in a negative way as well.
I really like what you said about family first and balancing all different things. What would you tell employees who don't share that same belief system, who don't have balance, and especially that metaphor that you had mentioned about the career ladder versus the career pyramid? How do the employees typically react to something like that when it's not in their personal beliefs? Do you see them floundering and eventually leaving, or do you see them taking on that belief system after a certain time?
Well, I wouldn't ever expect anyone to take on my belief system. But I want them to be able to operate. I want them to understand what my belief system is and how I'm going to operate. Do I have room in my organization for workaholics who want to work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week? You bet I do. Do I want that for them? No. But I'm not going to tell them, you can't do that. But on the other hand, they all know where I come from. This is not something I shared with you only. Everyone in my organization understands how I am on this issue. And so, you don't have to act like you want to work 16 hours a day in my organization. You just have to deliver. How you deliver, the fact that you do deliver and how you do it and how you balance that, balancing all things is, that's individual. But you need to know at least what the boss thinks. This is how I manage myself. It's how I inform my organization, but I don't expect everyone to line up behind me and say, oh, by the way, I like your belief system, I'm going to do that. It just doesn't work that way. Question here?
Yeah. We're trying to follow the head of a little bit of that copy of two different approaches to how you got to where you are today.
Mm-hmm.
Started off talking about how your leadership style has evolved over your family experiences, where you came from, so it's kind of very organic.
Right.
And then you started talking about this pyramid model versus the ladders that implied a lot of kind of planning and strategy and forethought into how you wanted your career to evolve. So I'm trying to figure out to what extent you felt for your career development has been planned, even if in broad brushstrokes, and what of it has been, well, I just kind of fell into this.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd never had a plan that said I was going to be the CEO, and I never had a plan that said I was going to be the CIO. I mean, those are jobs I never really dreamed of or never even wanted. So things happen. But there's one thing that was the plan. There was one thing that I valued, and what I valued was I want to learn everything about this business. I want to go over here and run the accounting organization, just so I understand what accountants do on closing time and understand why they have to spend 3 days, three 24-hour days to close the books at the end of the month or the quarter. That's a value that I valued, a broad understanding of the business. When you do those things and you grab the opportunity, you're ready to grab the opportunity when it presents itself, or you're ready to even make that opportunity for yourself, which I've done on many cases, then it ends up looking like a plan, but it wasn't. It was just a value system that kind of worked out. Literally, the CIO is a perfect example of that. I became the CIO because I did the program management for SAP. I did program management because I said literally, I went home and talked to my wife. I had 3 offers one day. I could be the head of marketing for our diabetes care business. I could be the head of marketing in a consumer care business, or I could do this SAP thing. And I literally had no idea what the SAP thing was. And I said, my wife said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to do the SAP thing. She said, what is that? I said, I don't know. I'm finding out on Friday when I meet with the consultant. Okay, now the value system that came into play was, I don't know anything about this. Maybe I better learn. And what looked like a plan in retrospect was, it was the best job I ever did to develop my career. No plan around it. And then I became the CIO and got to consolidate 7 data centers into one and do a lot of things like that. Never wanted to be a CIO. So it really is a combination of both organic and planning.
We have time for one last question.
Sorry.
I'm a postdoc and a student here, and it's interesting to know that you have been with an organization over the years, given the nowadays. So just overall, what was it about the organization that had you there? And what would you advise us who are through the process of finding that right better things to work for?
Interesting and challenging assignments kept me here. Always having the feel, sometimes moving too fast, back to the gentleman's question in the back, that I was going to get an interesting and challenging assignment when I got tired of the one that I was on now, or maybe even before I did. That was all that kept me here. I've had major differences with the company over the years. I've had, we aren't the highest, we don't have the highest compensation model of all companies. That's really, it comes down to what are you really working for? I make a good living. I'm not going to say that I don't. I earn more money than I ever dreamed of coming from the time I was a dairy farmer, right? But it's about being challenged and continuing to grow personally and professionally. And that's what you have to look for in a job. And it may be 10 employers that you're going to have over your 30 years, or it may be 1. I'm not even saying I'm done, right? So I'm not going to say that I'm going to retire here and never work again. I may work other places too, if the jobs. What am I going to do next here, right? I have to have, in a few years, an interesting and challenging assignment. If I can't find it here, I'll find it somewhere else. And what I would tell all of you is, look for interesting, challenging assignments. Don't chase promotions. Don't chase the money. Grow, develop. Interesting, challenging assignments will help you find out where you want to be. And I have a Gen Xer right now that I'm mentoring who is struggling with that. What am I going to do here next? Because I'm ready. And then I had a discussion, her approach to me was, I'm thinking about leaving. I said, great, what are you going to? I don't know. Now this is a person who's 14 years in the industry. I don't know. I said, that's what we have to think about first. What are we going to? If you have an idea what you're going to, I'll help you get there. If not in the company, externally. because it's all about fulfilling your needs. But don't just jump and say, I don't think I'm getting what I want, but I don't know what I want. But that's, that's not it sounds simplistic, but a lot of employees come to that. They get frustrated, they don't even know why, and they jump. But they didn't need to jump. I can't tell you how many times I was so close to jumping over the 33 years. So close to jumping. And then found out I didn't have to if I knew what I was looking for. Thank you all very much.